There's a lot of creative ways that you can give of yourself and of your stuff in your retirement years. And this isn't even limited to retirement necessarily, right? I mean, we can be generous throughout our whole lives with our time, our talent, and our treasures. So don't wait. Generosity is not a stage of life. It's an act of worship. Welcome to Stewardology, a podcast where two worlds collide. In this show, financial advisor Tim Russell and Pastor Gysi are joined by me, producer Tyler Rutherford, to explore the intersection of financial stewardship and theology. Their unique perspectives help Christians and churches understand and apply a biblical framework for everyday financial decisions so Christians everywhere can grow in their walk with Christ through biblical stewardship. Before we get started, we just wanted you to know that the topics discussed in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations. Investment and investment strategies involve risk, including the potential loss of principal, and past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Securities and advisory services are offered through Genius Wealth Management, member FINRA, and SIPC. Without further ado, here are your hosts, Tim Russell, Gysi, and Tyler Rutherford.
Welcome to the Stewardology Podcast. My name is Tim Russell, and I'm joined with my co-host, Tyler.
Hi.
And Drew is off today. We should be back with us next week. All right. So today we're going to tackle the topic of charitable giving in retirement. How do we be creative in retirement and give generously? So there's this myth about retirement that retirement's really all about you. You worked hard your entire life. You put your 40 years in and, now it's time to sit back, relax, eat, drink, and be merry for tomorrow you die.
18 holes every day.
Hey, amen. That's right. Wear those pink shorts on the golf course and have fun. And in all seriousness, there's nothing wrong with leisure and pleasure to an extent, right? That yes, you work hard, you should be able to rest and enjoy some of the fruits of the labor. I believe Solomon talks about in the book of Ecclesiastes, like there's a evil under the sun. It's that someone who works hard doesn't enjoy the fruits of his labor. That's a sad thing. Okay, well, if that's the case, how do we think about retirement? What's its purpose? And how do we act in it with regard to generosity? How can we be creative in the ways that we give?
Yeah, before we jump in, I want to say we have an episode that we have recorded. I'll link it in the show notes, but it's redefining retirement to this concept of redeployment. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, I strongly encourage you to go back and check out that episode because it will transform the way that you think about retirement and how it's not ultimately about me and how I spend my time and how I enjoy it and have this hedonistic idea, but it's about more than just that. So go out and check that out. I think it's called Redefining Retirement Redeployment. I think that's what it's called. I'll link it in the show notes for you.
Yeah, awesome. Great. So, okay, let's think about generosity in retirement. What are some creative ways that we can be generous in retirement? How do we advise our clients and those that we meet in our seminars around the country to increase generosity even in retirement? First thing is to think about generosity in more than just financial terms. So we want to think about it in terms of your time, your talents, and your treasures. So with regard to your time, if you're not doing a 9-to-5, you have theoretically more time and still the energy to expand and to expend. So volunteer for a ministry or volunteer to serve with your family or volunteer at your church. These are good ways of taking practical skills and expertise that you might have to help your church or other ministries with skills. I have one gentleman that I've worked with in the past who was like an engineer his entire life and just loved helping and serving. And so not only is he helping his church with a variety of physical needs with regard to like the roof or the HVAC, he's also volunteering for a homeless shelter, and he's taken a board position. He's able to work with men who are dealing with addictions or any number of other challenges that are causing homelessness and offer the hope of Christ with them. So he's using his knowledge, his wisdom, his biblical skills to address both spiritual and practical needs.
Yeah.
So he's volunteering his time, and it is a great blessing to him. It gives him joy, it gives him purpose. He wakes up every day, he has something to do.
Yeah. There was a guy that in the church that I grew up in, I swear the entire time I knew him, he was retired from birth when I was born until when I left that church at age 24 or something like that. But anyway, he was so good with his hands. He was like a handyman, could do anything. And what's funny about him was he was at the church building every single day practically during the week. He was retired. He didn't really have anything else to do. But no one in the church really knew who changed the light bulbs, who updated certain things, changed outlets, mowed the grass. Like there were things that would just happen that people in the church had no idea like how this got done, because my friend Skip, he had recently passed away, but Skip was his name. He would just do it. He would show up at the church and just handle things.
That's so fantastic.
And it was such a blessing to the staff. And that's how he chose to spend a lot of his time in retirement, was just being a blessing to the church.
Go be a Skip.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
it was
go
awesome.
be a Skip.
Be a Skip.
Yeah. How about go on missions trips,
Yeah.
right? You've got time, so take a grandchild with you. This is a great way of investing time in the relationship with that grandchild, exposing them to the world beyond their own little bubble, and being able to serve in practical, meaningful ways. Adopt a young pastor or church planter. This is Drew was talking about this with me. He's like, this was the most helpful thing that someone did for me, that, they'll take me under their wing and just show me the ropes, just help me figure stuff out as a pastor financially. Like for him, he had a guy in his church who said, you're setting up a retirement account and you're opting into Social Security. These are not choices. Here, let's get it done.
Just do it.
And this is not a pastor. This is like a retired individual who had financial savvy, who just took him as a young pastor under his wings and said, we're getting you set up in the right way. I don't want you to be a statistic, right? I want you to be stable and able to handle your own family and financial needs. So adopt a pastor or church minister, church planter, to kind of help them figure out life and kind of figure out some of the financial things, and give them direction. What a blessing.
There were some older folks when I was growing up, especially as like an older teenager or a young adult. These older folks always had invites to us to come over to their houses. And they were like hyper hospitable. They were always like, hey, you come over for lunch, that kind of thing. And it was always fun because as a 20-something, I was being poured into by someone who had 5 decades of experience on me. And their home was always so warm and welcoming. And it was fun to be a part of. We'd play games, we'd eat meals together, and you'd develop relationships with people that could teach you a lot about life and a lot about God and faithful living. And if you're in that stage where you're like, yeah, I could open my home up. I could be hospitable to young people, or it doesn't even have to just be young people, but do that. That's such an awesome time. After church on Sundays, throughout the week, have people over and invest into them. I promise you, it means so much more to them than what you think it does. It's not merely just a meal. That's time well spent. So invest that into people. Yeah. I love it. So we talked about time, and one thing that's really closely connected to time is your talents. Yeah. So, there are practical hands-on talents that you might have that you can offer, but let's think a little bit broader than just like practical, like I know how to change a light bulb. Think about wisdom. Yeah. If you have certain knowledge and experience, share your wisdom. If you die, when you die, and you haven't passed along that knowledge and that wisdom to the next generation, that wisdom dies with you. What a tragedy. Yeah. That makes your death that much more tragic and that much more of a loss. And I don't mean that in a, like, because I'm like, oh, that's so, your life is so meaningful that you people were impacted. No, what a waste of a life that you didn't share that knowledge and those wisdom to the next generation to help them avoid the mistakes that you made or to learn from lessons that you had to learn from. Yeah.
When we don't pass on the skills, the knowledge, and the wisdom that we've accumulated over the years, the next generation is impoverished. The older generation must train and pass on to the younger generation, but that also means you need to have a certain amount of humility and grace when doing it. You can't be the old crotchety, in my day, we didn't do that. We didn't have those fast wing-bang computers. We're not talking about that. With a certain amount of humility and approachability with this, but if you have those knowledge, that skill, train them. Think about this even before you leave your company, before you retire. Like, are you training your replacement well? Do they know how to do the things that you do? Are you leaving your wisdom? Are you leaving your company in a better place?
Yeah.
Those are important.
This is a funny, I've been getting into this hobby over the last, I would say maybe year, and there's a really perfect example of this dichotomy between people that are humble and people that are like, I've been doing it this way for 50 years. The world of ham radio is very interesting. I went to a ham radio club at one point I had to take a test to get licensed and I passed, but I had to go there and there were other people. And there were half the group there was basically like this, I'm better than you mentality. And they were just closed off from passing on their knowledge and their skill sets to the young people, the people that will carry on the hobby, right? But then there were literally other people, and I kid you not when I say that it was literally split in half in the room. Like you had the snobby people on this side of the room and the people that were willing to pass on wisdom in this side of the room. And I'll tell you what, the people that were willing to pass on their knowledge and their skill sets, they were a lot more fun to hang out with. And
Shocker.
Very helpful. But this could be applied to a lot of things. I know, like your dad, Tim, Roy, the one who founded the Life Group, he's a woodworker now. Like he does a lot of woodworking things, and I'm sure you have stories there and things that he could pass on to you. Because I don't think you are a woodworker.
I am not. No. It's not a skill I have. But I can tell you, my wife, myself, my kids have been over there and have done projects with them. I've built things and have been blessed and encouraged by kind of him helping them figure out how to approach a project that looks really challenging.
Yeah. Drew was sharing a story when we were writing out this episode that one example of this is his son might need help working on a car, right? And instead of Drew just going over and fixing the car, like Tim had mentioned earlier, it's good to teach. So yeah, go work on the car with your son or with someone that needs the help, but teach them how to do it. That's a great way to pass on the skill set and the actual physical talent to that next generation. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, there's stewarding skills, talents that you have. Use those, leave those as well. If you're gifted financially, you can do a budget like nobody's business. There are people, we talked about this with the episode, was it 2 episodes ago, where we had the stewarding lessons for like single people. If you've got those blessings, those skills, bless someone who doesn't have that skill set but needs to because it's all on them. They're single. Your kids, your spouse. If you own a business or if you own real estate, your multi-generational assets, it's really essential for you to teach the next generation how to steward the things that you're leaving behind them.
Wow, yeah.
Leaving behind you, leaving to them, right? You're passing along the stewarding of, money. Do they know how to steward money well? Do they know how to do the charitable giving well? To think through who and when and how to give money away? Do they know how to save and manage money? Do they know the value of money? Do they know how to maintain a property? I have one client who has an expansive piece of real estate, and his son is going to take over. And one of the things that we've talked to our client about is your son ready to step into the stewarding of this property, of how to maintain the equipment, maintain the buildings, maintain the land? Is he ready to take on that responsibility? And interestingly, to my client's credit, he didn't think his son was yet. So, that's something that we're working towards over the next number of years to include him in discussions and conversations to help him be ready so that when the Lord calls my client home, his son is going to be ready to do the thing.
Yeah, that's so important because you might be thinking like this is a huge act of generosity, but if they're not prepared, it's actually going to be a big burden for them and it might crush them in many ways. It's huge. So I think that's a really good transition into the next topic. We've talked about how to steward and give your time. We've talked about how to steward well and give your talents. But treasures are the thing that we often think about first when we talk about giving in retirement, generosity. We think about money first all the time, giving to our church, we tithe and all of this. So how do we give creatively our treasures in retirement?
Well, the easy option, right? You can do the charitable generosity through giving cash. You can donate your investments like highly appreciated stocks, mutual funds, ETFs. You could do qualified charitable distributions, QCDs, when you're 70 and a half or older. These are all ways to bless nonprofit organizations and give to charity. I would argue that there is a way to give through these avenues that actually simplifies your financial life and your estate planning life. In fact, I've had conversations with several significant business owners where hundreds of millions of dollars of value in their companies that have chosen to give away their entire corporations to a donor advised fund. They still run the company. They're still paid as an employee of the company. They're simply aligning on paper what's true in spiritual reality, that God owns the business, that they're a steward of the business. They have given that entirely over to a nonprofit charitable organization. So all of the profits go to fund the charitable activities of the company. It's reduced their tax burden almost infinitely. And it has increased their joy and their satisfaction because they don't have that burden over their head, and it simplified the estate planning process. Wow. They don't need to worry about like leaving this thing to kids and what it's going to do to ruin their kids' faith or their work ethic. It's just going to continue in perpetuity under this framework. So generosity before death can be a really creative way of thinking about managing your both tax and estate planning challenges that are eventually coming down the road.
Yeah, that's great. And I know for me, oftentimes when I think about generous giving, I'm immediately thinking about my church or some kind of nonprofit organization. But what about family generosity? And we're thinking about our kids and grandkids. Like what do we need to think about in that regards?
So when we think about giving money to our kids, so much of the time we think about when I die, they'll inherit. And yeah, there's time and a place where that's appropriate. But while you're alive, they probably need the money or be more of a blessing to them at that particular stage of their life than maybe in 20 years when the Lord calls you home. So you get to see the blessing of that, the help that it is to the kids during your lifetime, and also judge their effectiveness in the stewarding of that gift within their lifetime to judge how you're going to handle future gifts or even eventual estate bequests. So giving to your kids, to your grandkids to help with creating here's an idea. How about you create a retirement or a college savings incentive plan? So you can say, if you contribute $1,000 to your college 529, I'll match you dollar for dollar. If you contribute to a Roth IRA for you and for your spouse, I'll match you dollar for dollar up to a certain amount. $1,000 was what my parents did, and it was really good to get me and my siblings in the habit of savings even when we didn't feel we could afford to. That was a blessing that my parents gave. Now, they also put a time limit on it. When you turn 30 or when you turn 35, no more. I want to get you the habit sooner than later. It wasn't everything. They weren't going to make the contributions for me, but if I showed wisdom, they'd bless wisdom. So one way of giving to your family is to teach them through the use of your money wise savings and investing habits, which will yield dividends down the road in their lives.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. It reminds me of a story or something I experienced actually years ago. My grandparents were restructuring their will, and I think I told this story on the podcast. But essentially, they gave each one of the grandkids a check with a dollar figure on it, and they tasked us with something specific and all this. And I brought that story back here, and a lot of the guys were like, "That's awesome, but just make sure the Medicaid 5-year look back rule, like make sure the whole what was it the 5-year look back rule." Right. So can you walk through that just very briefly and discuss just why we need to consider that? Why was that brought up when I was telling my story?
When you give money to individuals, you could do it in a way to game the Medicaid system. So if you don't have long-term care insurance, or you don't want all of your money to go to the nursing home, theoretically, one could give away all of their assets to their kids, to their grandkids, and then have nothing left. They make themselves destitute and then apply for Medicaid and say, "Hey, Medicaid, I'm poor. Give me coverage for my nursing care." The government's wise to that. So now they say, well, we're going to go and from the moment you apply for Medicaid, we're going to look back 5 years. And we want to claw back any gift that you've given away within the past 5 years to an individual. So you give money to your kids. Could be $5,000, could be $500,000. They don't care. They're going to want to claw that back because they're not going to give you any kind of assistance until the amount that has been given away has been accounted for or been used to pay your own expenses. So you can't do what's called essentially a form of Medicare fraud by hiding that money, giving it away, and still getting the Medicare assistance for retirement planning. So anytime you do a gift, there's a 5-year clock that starts. If you apply for Medicaid, that gift can be an issue. So you don't want to do this if there's a chance that you're going to need that money. If there's a chance you could become destitute within the next 5 years, probably don't do that giving directly to your family, or do it in a way with an awareness of that 5-year look back rule so that your kids know that you might need it back. But if that's the case, if you're fine. Most people who have enough means to do this kind of generosity to their family are not worried about the 5-year look back rule. Again, you need to be aware of it, but you probably don't need to worry about it. There's one more thing I think could be really helpful. We talk about giving cash incentives, but that there's an annual gifting limit you can give to your kids. And sometimes for people with substantial means, it's really a good idea to start spending down your account and getting more of that money into the hands of your kids. If you live in a state like right here, Pennsylvania, there's a Pennsylvania inheritance tax. So you leave money to your kids, to your grandkids, that's taxed. If you give it to them during your life, it's not taxed. Caveat, as long as you give it to them more than 12 months before you die. Any gift given within 12 months of your death is deemed a deathbed gift and is subject to Pennsylvania inheritance tax. There you go. They're going to get you coming or going. This is, again, you start giving that money away during your lifetime to spend down your assets so there's less tax at your death. That can be a legitimate option. Again, understand the 5-year look back rule, understand the deathbed gift rule, but that could be a helpful thing. Another thing to think about is if you have assets that are highly taxable to you, but might not be that taxable to your kids. Let's just say you own a stock with a low basis. Well, you can donate $15,000 of that stock to a kid. They can sell it. Let's say it's all capital gains. Their income is low enough, they're in a zero capital gain bracket. That could actually make sense for them to use those assets to avoid the capital gain and allow them to have the benefit of that money. So again, there are ways to give other kinds of tax-wise assets to your kids during your lifetime. All right, now we can move on to the third category.
Yeah, lifetime giving goals. What do you have here?
Some of my clients have a goal that they want to die with zero. They want to give away all of their money during their lifetime because a gift delayed is a blessing reduced. Therefore, I want to do all my giving while I'm living, so I'm knowing where it's going, right? To borrow a Ron Blue quote, and they simply want to die with zero. Some people modify that and say, well, I want to keep a certain minimum threshold and my house, or, have at least a plan for my house. There are actually ways to do, even including your house and be able to stay in it, to do your giving during your lifetime. Here's the thing. You have to make sure that if you're married, your spouse is on board, because it's got to be your giving goals, your combined couple giving goal, not just your goal, forcing your spouse to bow to what you want. If the Lord is not leading you and your spouse in the same direction, then he's not leading you. Like you gotta trust him that he's going to lead you both in this together. Now, I would also argue that if the Lord's leading you, your spouse is not on board, don't jump and do the thing anyway, but work with your spouse to get to the point where you have a consensus, where you can move forward, or at least you have the agreement and the assent that we're going to move in this direction, even if it's a substantial step of faith. Yeah. But husbands, talk to you for a minute. Please don't strong arm your wives. Don't bulldoze over them. Be gentle in the way that you lead them in this way. If you're convicted by this, or women, if you're convicted this way, again, don't nag your husband or guilt trip your husband, but pray and talk and discuss, and the Lord will lead you in the right direction. Trust him. Trust him with this. So anyway, there's lifetime goals. Some people want to give it all away. There are problems with that. If you do charitable giving and you're giving it all away to charity within your lifetime, you're never going to be able to get full benefit of the charitable deduction. Remember, if you donate cash, you can only deduct up to 50% of your adjusted gross income. So if you have $100,000 of adjusted gross income, you can only donate, get a credit or deduction to donate $50,000. And that's only if it's cash. If you give capital gains assets like stocks or mutual funds, ETFs, it's 30% of that value. You can carry it forward for 5 years, but many times people who are doing this are giving away more than what they can actually take within one given year. So that's if you're doing charitable. But if you're doing charitable and individuals, then it's a combination of a number of things. Just be aware of the annual gifting limit. You don't want to give more than that because there are potential estate tax complications. You have to file a special form on your tax return if you give more than the annual gifting limit, which I think, for the sake of argument right now, let's say it's about $19,000 per individual. Husband and wife, if you're married, that means you can give away each $19,000 per person per child. So you could give away $38,000 to each one of your kids. And if each one of your kids is married, you can give $38,000 to their spouse as well, and $38,000 to each one of their kids if you're married. So there are lots of ways that you can give away a lot of money without causing this problem, but you just need to be aware of the problem. So these are lifetime giving goals. Others have something called financial finish lines. So there's a die with zero goal, and the second goal would be the lifetime financial finish line. So in this case, it could be an income finish line. I'm going to set my annual income at $100,000. Anything above $100,000, I'm giving away. It could be an asset goal. I only want to have $500,000, $1 million, whatever the number is. Any amount of growth above that threshold, I want to give it away. These are ways of setting financial finish lines that can be really creative. I would pray through what this would look like. And we should probably do an episode in the future on financial finish lines and what they look like and how to apply them. But that's something that I think you need some wisdom and advice to figure out how to apply them well and wisely in your financial realities. The last way of doing charitable giving at retirement is really to do it at your death. where you name churches and ministry as the beneficiary designation of your IRAs, traditional IRAs, annuities, 401ks. This allows the money that's taxable to your kids to go to tax-exempt organizations. That's a good strategy. You can also give in your will. So give X percent to various ministries, and here's the list of them. You can also list a donor-advised fund as the charitable recipient and then instruct your kids, the successor donor advisors, or the organization like National Christian or Waterstone to distribute the funds according to a certain plan at your death. So there are ways to do charitable giving even at death.
Well, I think this was helpful, Tim. There's a lot of creative ways that you can give of yourself and of your stuff in your retirement years. And I think it's fair to say that this isn't even limited to retirement necessarily, right? I mean, we can be generous throughout our whole lives with our time, our talent, and our treasures. So don't wait. I think it's important to recognize that generosity is not a stage of life. It's an act of worship. And so as we're thinking about this, let's not just process giving as a tax deduction or something that just benefits us in the back end, like saving money on taxes or whatever, what have you, right? This actually is an act of worship, and giving to other people around us is a way to demonstrate how much God means to us, right? When we give to our church, we're demonstrating that God means more to us than money. And what an amazing opportunity to be able to give generously of our time, our talents, and our treasures to the people around us in our community, to our church community, to organizations that are doing great work for our community and for the kingdom of God. These are great opportunities, Tim. I really appreciate you sharing these with us today.
Well, I hope you found this episode helpful. Until next time, take care, God bless, and remember, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Stewardology Podcast, where financial stewardship and theology meet. We'd like to help you take your next steps in biblical financial stewardship. Subscribe in your podcast provider to get the newest episode delivered to you every week. Leave a 5-star rating and review to help new listeners find the show. Take advantage of your free personal stewardship review at stewardologypodcast.com/review. Be sure to follow us on social media and visit our website at stewardologypodcast.com for tons of free resources and hundreds of free episodes. You can also leave episode ideas at stewardologypodcast.com/idea. Remember, Psalm 20, verse 7, some trust in chariots and some trust in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. See you next week.